Welcome to the Natural Super Kids podcast, where you will discover practical strategies to inspire you to boost the health and nutrition of your kids. I'm Jessica Donovan, a qualified naturopath specialising in kids' health, and I want to make it as easy as possible for you to raise healthy and happy kids. Let's get into it. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Natural Super Kids podcast. It's great to be in your ears for part 2 of our eczema series. So if you missed last week, we started the eczema series with part 1 and we talked about the 3 underlying factors or underlying causes that you need to know as a parent when it comes to your child's eczema. So just a very quick recap, I definitely recommend that you go back and listen to that episode if you haven't heard it yet. We talked about immune dysfunction, we talked about gut microbiome and gut health in general, and we talked about skin integrity as well. So today I want to focus on steroid creams. We're going to talk a bit about the pros and the cons of steroid creams, what steroid creams are actually doing, and why they're not the long-term solution for eczema. You're probably not surprised to hear me say that, we want to avoid steroid creams if we can, but also I'm not anti-steroid creams altogether. They definitely have their place. They're a quick fix. They work well. They work fast to calm down that skin inflammation, but they do come at a cost. And I want to talk about some of the side effects and negative effects of using steroid creams long-term in today's episode. So I want to talk about the risks of overuse, what you can do instead, and I guess the reason that they're not the long-term solution. I see steroid creams as that Band-Aid fix. They're good to use in the short term to get on top of that skin inflammation, particularly if a child's having a real flare-up, they're uncomfortable, they're itchy, they're red, they're inflamed. Steroid creams can be the quickest way for a lot of kids to really reduce that skin inflammation, but they're not doing anything to address the underlying causes of the inflammation in the first place. So that's why they are really not the long-term solution. They suppress inflammation, but they don't heal or address the underlying causes. They're often prescribed repeatedly without exploring why the eczema is happening in the first place. So if you take your child to the doctor with eczema, you might get a referral to a dermatologist. Almost always you will walk away with a script for a steroid cream. There's not a lot else that the modern medicine offers when it comes to eczema. They may do some allergy testing potentially, but really it's, addressing that inflammation at skin level is the modern medical approach to eczema. It helps to calm down the symptoms, but it doesn't do anything to address that underlying cause. So that's really what I want you to know about steroid creams. It doesn't mean you shouldn't use them ever, because they definitely do have their place, but we do want to think carefully about how often and how long we use steroid creams. So there are risks associated with long-term use. And you may have also heard about topical steroid withdrawal, which can be absolutely horrendous. So let's talk about some of the risks of long-term use of steroid creams first. So the first one is thinning of the skin. Now, this is especially a problem in delicate areas such as like the face, the eyelids, the groin. And this is why, we need to be careful, particularly in those areas. And we need to make sure that when we're using steroid creams, we're not using them, too frequently or for too long a period of time, because that thinning of the skin can also be associated with increased sensitivity of the skin, where the skin becomes more reactive, more fragile, more prone to infections. And if you've ever had a child with infected eczema, it is not fun. So, ongoing use, frequent use of steroid creams can increase that risk of infection and the skin becoming more reactive and more fragile. There's also a risk of steroid dependency where the body gets used to the steroid cream and it flares or becomes worse without it. And this really ties into that topical steroid withdrawal, TSW for short. You'll find lots of information about TSW online. It is a growing concern, and it's something that a lot of doctors don't talk to parents about. I think it's really important to know that this is, probably more common than you think. We come across families and parents that are struggling with topical steroid withdrawal, fairly frequently, and also it can sometimes be hard to diagnose because the symptoms of topical steroid withdrawal are almost identical to eczema itself. So topical steroid withdrawal happens when generally it's from long-term or frequent use of steroids, and then when you stop using those steroid creams, the skin can become really red, burny, itchy, inflamed, similar to when you are struggling with eczema. So it can be really hard to determine whether this is an eczema flare because you've stopped using the steroid cream, or if it is topical steroid withdrawal. So for that reason, I do think there are a lot of people out there that are struggling with topical steroid withdrawal and they don't even know about it. So topical steroid withdrawal can affect kids. As I said, it generally happens when there's been frequent or long-term use of steroid creams. And recovery from topical steroid withdrawal can take weeks, months, even years, depending on the severity and the length of time, someone has been dependent on topical steroids. So this is, I don't want to be fear-mongering here. I just want to make sure people are aware of this. And this is one of the reasons it's so important to address those underlying causes so that we can prevent kids from becoming dependent on steroid cream. So I am not saying don't ever use steroid creams, but I do believe that parents deserve to be fully informed and supported with alternatives, which is what we are all about here at Natural Super Kids. So use steroid creams minimally and strategically in a bigger holistic approach to your child's eczema is basically what I'm saying. Steroid creams can be a fantastic short-term tool to get that skin inflammation under control while we address the underlying causes of that inflammation in the first place. So our goal is to reduce reliance on steroid creams by addressing the cause of the inflammation in the first place. And if your child is already using steroid creams frequently or long-term use of steroid creams, then make sure you talk to your doctor about reducing the use of those creams, and don't just stop using them cold turkey. You really want to gradually reduce the use of those steroid creams, again, while you're addressing some of those underlying causes. So I did mention last week we have a really comprehensive eczema masterclass where I walk you through the 6 steps to healing your child's eczema naturally. I'll make sure the link to that is in the show notes. So if you're wanting to really work through the steps that we use with our Natural Super Kids Club members, with our one-on-one naturopath clients, then you can, it's all covered within the eczema workshop. So check that out. And it's under $50. And it really is worth, the amount of money that people pay for creams and lotions and bath additions and those sorts of things for their kids' eczema. Trial and error of all of these different things. The eczema workshop, we've just had amazing results from the people that have taken part, watched and implemented what we've talked about in the eczema workshop. So it's a naturopathic, holistic approach, but we make it really simple to follow and easy to implement for busy families. So we've talked about, I think I've kind of honed in and made the point that steroid creams have their place, but we really want to try not to use them long-term or frequently. So what do we do instead? Well, as I said, I take you through all of the exactly how to heal your child's eczema in the workshop, but I do want to talk about a few things here. So we can use other creams to strengthen the skin barrier and nourish the skin. There are a lot of natural cream and lotion options. Now, unfortunately, there's not like a magic cream that is great for everyone because every child has different skin, different sensitivities. And so you do need to be careful in terms of the ingredients of some of the natural creams and lotions because, a lot of them will have food-based ingredients in them and your child may react to those particular foods. So what works for one child may not work for another. Some of our favorites, we love to use tallow balms. We love to use shea butter. Things like calendula and chamomile are lovely natural anti-inflammatories. And so the natural products that contain some of those ingredients can be really great for a lot of kids. We can also support the strength of that skin barrier and the integrity of the skin barrier with internal nutrition. So vitamins and minerals like vitamin A, vitamin D, zinc, omega-3 are all really important when it comes to the integrity of the skin barrier. And if kids are deficient or lacking in any of those types of nutrients, then that's going to negatively affect, the skin barrier. And we do talk more about that and how to make sure that your child is getting adequate levels of all of those nutrients in the eczema workshop. We also want to make sure we're addressing those underlying factors that we talked about in last week's podcast episode: immune dysregulation, gut microbiome health, and as we just talked about, the health of that skin integrity as well. So we can support and strengthen and regulate the immune system with, nutrition, with herbal supplements, and with lifestyle strategies. Again, we go into a lot more detail in the eczema workshop. And we do want to make sure we're getting on top of those flare-ups of eczema as well. So potentially we can use steroid creams, but we can also use things like wet wraps, herbal creams, oatmeal baths can work really well as well for, soothing any skin flare-ups in children. Most importantly, though, what I want parents to know is although eczema is a skin condition and it's affecting the skin, the best way to get long-term results for eczema is an internal approach. It comes down to working on the immune system, the gut, and also the skin health as well. And so, as I said, steroid creams might be a good Band-Aid fix, but they don't solve or address what is going on internally underneath the surface. With the right approach, you can help your child need steroid creams less or even not at all. And we hear that feedback from our Natural Super Kids Club members all the time that they don't rely on steroid creams for their kids' eczema anymore, which is such a relief when we know about some of those downsides and side effects to using steroid creams regularly. Now, next week in our third episode in this eczema series, we're going to talk about common triggers when it comes to eczema. And so I'm going to be talking about different foods and environmental substances that are commonly triggering eczema. Now, I sort of touched on this in last week's episode. Removing offending triggers from a child's diet or from their environment is only part of the picture, but it is important to know and to, investigate what it is that is triggering your child's eczema, because it is very different for every child. For one child, it might be food like dairy, or it might be that they have a histamine intolerance, which is really common in kids with eczema. And in another child, it might be more environmental. It might be dust mites or even mold that are triggering their child's eczema. So we're going to talk more about those triggers in next week's episode. I hope this has been helpful. Let me know. Reach out to me on Instagram over at Natural Super Kids. You can send us a DM or you can email me, Jessica@naturalsuperkids.com. I'd love to hear from you and let me know how you're finding this eczema series on the podcast. And yeah, if you sign up for the eczema masterclass, I would love to hear how you find it as well. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll be back in your ears next week. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Head on over to our website, naturalsuperkids.com, for the show notes for this episode, as well as a whole heap of inspiration to help you raise healthy and happy kids. I'll see you next week.